Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Verity Seeker, and I'm your host, Mark Powles. And I have a very special guest here today. This is John McCaughrean, candidate for U.S. House representing the 3rd District of Kansas. And John, thanks a lot for coming on the show today.
Appreciate it. My mom did call me special, so I feel very special. Thank you, sir.
Well, you are, because you are a candidate. You've stepped out of your private life,
Yes,
and
sir.
you are going to run for an office in our U.S. general government, and hopefully are going to try to do some good up there.
Yes, sir.
To start out, why don't we give you an opportunity to just talk about yourself a little bit. Who is John McCaughrean?
Yep.
And tell us a little bit about your family and where you live. Approximately, you don't have to give us your address.
Well, great coordinates, this, and this. I was kidding.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
no, I live in Wyandotte County, 10 years in the Army. First month in high school, freshman year, was 9/11. So being kid of a Navy brat, great-grandfather did Army Air Corps, World War II. Landed on Normandy 4 days after D-Day. Grandfather was in Korean War as a Marine. My father did 6 years in the Navy as a nuclear engine operator. So I learned about power production. In the last 34 years, he's been a union boiler operator. So I'm pro-union, but I'm also pro-right to work. So I've seen the benefits of both, but I also don't believe like in bullies, and I don't like in authoritarian states. So that's why I'm the candidate who I am. But live in Wyandotte County. Did the Army for 10 years, 2 tours of Iraq, 1 tour of Afghanistan as an intelligence analyst, brief generals, brief NATO. Lived on the southern border for 6 months, so I've seen the atrocities down there. It's a doggone disgrace. But after I got out of the Army, wanted to get settled back down, so Kansas City, Kansas, where it was, because I did 5 years at Fort Riley. And loved this place. Went to my first ever NFL game back in November. I grew up on Packers football because my dad grew me up on Packers football. So I went to my first game at Arrowhead, and my son, being born at Fort Riley, my oldest one, he's a huge Patrick Mahomes fan. So we got to see Patrick Mahomes play, and you guys almost lost my backup quarterback.
Yeah.
So. It wasn't for special teams, but special teams was horrible last year. So, yep. So
They have their ups and downs.
Yes, sir. And special teams was embarrassed last year against the 49ers, so that's why they fired the special teams coach. And guess what? It's almost time for NFL again. So
Yeah. Now, do you have children? Do you
Yes.
have your oldest son?
I've got 4 kids in my house.
4 kids. Wow.
3 of them are me and my wife's. 13-year-old son, born in Fort Riley, Kansas. 10-year-old autistic son. Mm-hmm. He was born in Wiesbaden, Germany, when I was stationed there.
Wow.
And then my 7-year-old daughter, she was born in San Angelo, Texas, when I was stationed there. The only other kid I have in my house that's not fully mine is my 19th-month-old niece, who was born in Texas as well. So don't want to get too much into the details, but we brought her in, got her out of CPS and all that stuff, and taking care of her. So brought her back into family. How you doing?
Wow, yeah. All right.
Yes, sir.
Good deal. Okay, then. Now it's time for the big questions. We're going to get right into it so we can find out who John is and kind of how you're going to be thinking if you were to get elected to be in the U.S. House of Representatives.
Yeah.
It's a very important position in that government, so we're going to get right to it here. Now, ladies and gentlemen, these are going to be questions that mainstream media will not ask. So we're just up front, I'm going to say that, so get ready. And I'm sure John's going to have some great answers for this.
Yep.
What should be the proper role of the states in relation to the U.S. general government now I would call it a federal republic, but I've heard you mention constitutional republic, and others call it a constitutional republic because it is bound by a constitution. But what is the proper role between the states and the U.S. general government when it comes to power and control?
Well, to me, this is very easy, especially if you're a student. I mean, if you're at home watching this and you got kids, make sure you and your kids, and even your friends and family, read the Declaration of Independence. It's only 4 pages long. Read the Constitution. It's only 9 pages long, 7 articles. And before that, before we had the Constitution, we had the Articles of Confederation. So definitely read that. And also, as a side note, make sure you read the Confederate Constitution as well, which is very interesting. It mentions the word slavery in there like 11 times. But biggest thing is understanding the talking points on all this, understanding the arguments, because it's not just a piece of paper that was, okay, written up, blah, blah, blah. No, there was a lot of edits to it. In fact, the Declaration of Independence had numerous edits to it. The first time Thomas Jefferson, a slave owner, presented it, he was trying to actually free the slaves. But because South Carolina and Georgia didn't want it, they had to make sure they had 13 states going against the tyranny of the king. So it's a matter of making sure we have extremely limited, what I listened to Mark Levin for over the last decade, very negative liberties, federal government. The most positive liberties, the most freedoms are supposed to be with us, the people, we the people, first, and then at worst case, if the government needs to get involved, it needs to be the states. Everybody loves 32 football teams, which we were just talking about, competing against each other, 32 NHL, baseball, heck, even we're out here in Kansas where we got the NASCAR racetrack, 40 NASCAR teams racing against each other, which any given Talladega race, anybody can win, especially Mike McDowell a couple Februarys ago. But they love competition. They absolutely love it. And they don't want authoritarianism coming from that. So they realized the Articles of Confederation weren't working because there was too much of chaos. So they needed to sharpen it up, make it stronger, but also ensure the federal government was extremely limited, extremely restricted. So they literally stated that what roles of the government were. Article 1, Congress. Article 2, executive branch. Even though they're separate but equal, the most powerful one is Congress, with the House controlling the power of the purse. And Article 3, the Supreme Court, the least powerful one of them all. Then, of course, Article 4, the states, and Article 5, Convention of States, to keep them in check, and 6 and 7 to pretty much wrap up the Constitution. And they weren't too fond of it. Rhode Island was the last of the 13 states to join because they thought the federal government still had too much power, which is why they came up with the Bill of Rights. And the 10th Amendment specifically saying if it's not in the Constitution or amended to it, it's delegated to the people first and then at the states. So the federal government is responsible for two things: national security, our borders. Look at the southern border, absolute disaster. Look at Afghanistan, absolute disaster. International diplomacy. And physical policy or monetary policy, the value of the dollar, because the states can't create their own currency. It's controlled at the federal level, which there's 3 mints: Philadelphia, Denver, and the third mint, which most people don't know about, is a part-time mint at West Point.
No.
So it's a matter of controlling the currency, making sure we don't have 9% inflation, and making sure the dollar is stabilized, and trying, to me, get it back to the gold standard, because when you don't have paper money, you have to have some kind of form to trade, and that's where gold comes from. And trust me, they got off the gold standard to have full faith and trust in the currency with the federal government, which nobody has full faith and trust in the federal government.
Yeah,
not even Democrats.
And actually, in the Constitution is never in there saying that you could use anything other than what you just mentioned, gold and silver.
Yeah.
Isn't that right?
Yeah.
So what are we doing?
Yeah, exactly.
Which possesses more power? Kansas, our state, and I'm talking about our state because that's who you'll be representing, the people in your district of the state of Kansas, or its general government, meaning the U.S. general government,
DC,
as it pertains to the internal affairs of our state, or any state for that matter. Does Kansas have power over its own affairs internally, or does the U.S. general government have regulation power over our state?
Well, Kansas is supposed to. Our founding fathers designed it that way. A lot of it's been taken away by the federal government unconstitutionally. So, but Kansas is supposed to have the most specific powers, like I said, specifically in the 10th Amendment, because they had environmental issues. They didn't have cars, but they had horse and buggies. They had cows, and guess what? They still emitted carbon emissions. So, which doesn't smell good, especially if you've ever been around it. So they've had that. And plus, all states have an EPA. All states have this stuff. And it's just a matter of Kansas has it, and that's why the federal government is supposed to be limited. And if you can't trust the federal government with Afghanistan, southern border, or inflation, why would you trust them with anything else? Period. So
So you'd be in favor of Texas, since the federal government's not protecting that border. You would be in favor of Texas and any other state along the border protecting their borders.
Yes.
Would you be in favor of that?
Not only that too, but I've talked to the next governor of Kansas, Derek Schmidt, and I'm a huge favor of, if I remember correctly, it's Article 4, Section 3 of the United States government. If there is a invasion of our country, any states can send militia or National Guard down to those states to prevent the invasion. The southern border is an unconventional invasion. So if Derek Schmidt next year decides to send Kansas National Guard troops down to the southern border, not only will I stand shoulder to shoulder with Derek Schmidt, I will actually go down to the southern border with our National Guard troops and stand shoulder to shoulder with them, because I've been to Iraq, I've been to Afghanistan. We need to give relief to these Border Patrol agents and make sure that our union, our country is being taken care of. Enforce the Remain in Mexico policy, put that back into play, finish building the Trump wall. Might as well call it the big Trump wall, but more importantly, especially since there's Democrats going to be watching this, build the biggest doggone Trump gate you'll ever see. And it might even be gold too, or gold plated. We'll save some. We'll save some gold. We'll save some money. We'll put steel behind it with gold plated in the front. Make sure those gates are big and wide. Yep. That way, when you pass your background checks to the State Department, you respect us. Thank you. Come on through. It's a two-way street. Respect is a two-way street. Come on through, and we say thank you, and you're good to go. So,
right. Does the U.S. general government possess a constitutional power to mandate or regulate the internal affairs? Now, I think you sort of answered this, but we're kind of going back to 2020 on this one. If people haven't forgotten already.
Yes.
Mandate or regulate the internal affairs of any state in our union, or is there a defined and limited power the U.S. general government would have over the states, where the U.S. supremacy clause would actually be a constitutional requirement for the states to comply with?
I'm not sure if there's any news people out there watching this, but let me bring some news to you. There was plagues before 1776. Mm-hmm. They understood this, and they understood that states should be taking care of it. And to me, when it comes to even 2020, it shouldn't have been at the state level. It should be at the county level. You look at the counties based on what's going on with the COVID or the Wuhan virus or whatever you want to call it, and ensuring the simple fact that the counties look at it based on infection rates, hospitality rates, and all other stuff. So it like I said, positive versus negative liberties. It belongs here. It's the United States of America, not the United State of America. And we're supposed to be competing for the best interest of our people. If you don't like it, guess what? You can move to California. You can move to Florida. You can move to Texas. You can move to New York. You can move to Maine. You can move to Alaska, northern Alaska, where the bears are fine and ripe up there to take care of you. No, I was kidding. So, but Kansas is Kansas for a reason. We love a barbecue out here, and leave us alone. We don't need to have New York legislators telling us what to do. So,
and that is federalism.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yep.
We can all get along. Yeah. If you don't do a one-size-fits-all from the top down. Yeah. And, you can move where you want, where you have like-minded people, and we can all get along that way.
And that's the definition. That's the main focus, because we are not a democracy. Read the Constitution. Article 4, Section 4 of the United States government, the United States is a Republican form of government, which means the states are supposed to be competing. The federal government is supposed to stay the hell out of the way. Now, when it becomes an issue, I think more than 5 states, I would say, like the interstate highway system, then of course, yes, the federal government get involved, because the simple fact that you're talking about a massive project going across numerous states, which, remind you, the number one reason for the interstate highway system, since we are here in the state of Kansas, President Eisenhower started it, the number one reason for it is the ability to move troops in case of a time of war, and number 2, logistics. Number 3 is the one we all use. That's people moving across. Mm-hmm. But, yeah.
So the federal government, the U.S. general government, is really primarily responsible for foreign affairs is their big thing.
Yeah.
Congress and the president. Yeah. That's kind of what they deal with, and that's where their enumerated powers are.
Yeah.
And then
for states affairs, that's where it belongs with the states. Yeah. The federal government should have barely anything to do with it.
So they're retaining all other powers then.
The most negative liberties for the federal government when it comes to state affairs. Yes, sir.
That would be a great working relationship.
Yeah.
If they just knew it up there, if we had more people like you that were in there that actually knew these things, and you would know the proper relationship, we could actually get along.
Yeah. Don't worry. I'm the one who's got to deal with Ilhan Omar and AOC and Bernie Sanders next year. It's going to be, there's a reason why I'm only running for 3 terms, 6 years total, because the amount of stupidity coming out of there. It's just like, you know what? I'm passing this off to somebody else, because it's just out of control. Can we term limit you out of here?
Yeah.
We're done with you.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one. Under what conditions should a state or several states in this union nullify a U.S. law, act, resolution, executive order, or a mandate on a state?
A lot of that's going through the Attorney General's ensuring state laws, because a lot of state laws supersede federal law. So I'm a huge fan of the two guys I'm voting for. I don't know which one, because I can only vote for one, Mateve or Kobach, but Paxton, working with them in Texas and all that stuff. But having all that stuff, it's making sure that they enforce state law. But the other thing, too, is Article 5 Convention of States. If the states decide to say this is not only unprecedented, it's unconstitutional, and it belongs to the states, that's why I keep on hitting the mic. But it's a matter of them getting with the states and saying, hey, we're the ones that have the power on this. And a lot of laws, including even the thing of Chevron deference, which is a matter of, should the agency come up with the regulation, fine, or fee, or whatever it may be, or should Congress vote on it? First of all, when it comes to Chevron deference, on this argument that even Antonin Scalia had, it should be Congress, because we elect them to be held to appropriate actions, to vote in our interests. And best case, it should be held at the state level. A lot of these agencies and departments should be gone. So, like, we didn't have it until the 1970s, Department of Education, Department of EPA. So, both need to be gone.
Okay. Here's another one. Did the U.S. Supreme Court have an enumerated power, we're shifting, by the way, an enumerated power or judicial jurisdiction to hear the case of Roe v. Wade in 1973, I believe it was? And did the decision in that case create a constitutional or lawfully binding law upon the entire union protecting the institution of abortion? That was a long sentence.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
They did not. In 1776, they knew what life was. They knew conception started life. That's the science. Just follow the science, as we used to hear all the time, right? So we followed the science. We found out conception starts life. So in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or it used to be called property, but Thomas Jefferson didn't want to get too far into that because there was an issue. They were property in 1776. So life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness is what it is, and life started at conception. So they did not have the precedent, the ability to go in there and decide that, and based on, especially on the 10th Amendment. So they overrode constitutional law, and thank God, a month or two ago, the Supreme Court went ahead, looked back at it, and realized it's unconstitutional, sent it back to the states the way it's supposed to be.
So with their opinion, with the decision on that case, did it actually create a law? And I think that's what I was getting at. Was there actually a written law somewhere? So it was really in the minds of the people then, right?
It was an activist judicial system that was out of control and shouldn't have happened, because there was no law there. And in fact, right now we're talking about Joe Biden codifying Roe versus Wade, which means there wasn't a law there in the first place. Yeah. So
it's hard to beat a myth. It's brilliant how they psychologically manipulate mass amounts of people.
Yeah.
And conservatives need to just get smarter about this.
Well, also when it comes to that part as well, 63 million in 50 years is not rare and safe. My chief of staff, his wife has worked in a NICU, neonatal intensive care unit for babies, for 50 years. She has not seen one case of parent versus child. It's not saying it's not out there. I'm just saying it's the rarity of it all, which means 63 million in 50 years is not rare, not safe. It's over-abused. And the simple fact is, so 50% of that is man, 50% is woman. I can define what a woman is. And then also 40% of that is black. And remember, Planned Parenthood was started by Democrat Klanswoman Margaret Sanger. 40% of that was black babies. That's 25 million total, divided by 50 years. That's 500,000 babies killed a year. That is to me, that's true definition of institutional racism, and that needs to stop.
Every life is important.
Yeah.
And meaningful.
Yes, sir.
Okay. As a U.S. House representative, what unconstitutional agencies would you strive to dissolve if others in the U.S. House had the same courage you had? I know that's a loaded question. Which ones would you get rid of?
Well, let's see. I'm running in the 3rd District. I go off the Herman K. 999 plan, so I'm running for the 333 plan. 3rd District, number of the 3 terms, my 3 topics. So if I'm going to pick 3 agencies, One, I'm going to get rid of the most unconstitutional agency that's been around for 100 years, ATF. The only thing that's good left in that, send it to the FBI, but 90% of that needs to be dissolved and gone. ATF needs to go bye-bye, send it to the FBI, which the FBI's got a lot of issues too, and it's only been around for 100 years. There's a reason why they didn't have an FBI, but I do see a few things right with that, but there's a lot of things wrong with that, especially with 2016 and James Comey and Peter Strzok and Lisa Page and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But there's some parts I think I'm going to be able to salvage with the FBI when it comes to international issues that are on our home front. That's their jurisdiction, is the home front inside the 50 states and the U.S. territories. The other two after the ATF would be EPA. Every state's got an EPA. Yeah. The federal government EPA is getting way out of hand. In fact, we just saw the Supreme Court overturn it with West Virginia versus EPA, which is whole war on climate justice that started with Joe Biden on day one with Executive Order 13990 that administered all the agencies and departments to go through the Department of Justice for the war on climate justice. That has literally caused gas prices and inflation to go up every single month since he's been in office. So send it back down to the states where the Kansas EPA can figure out what's proper and right for them and just get rid of it. It was created in the 1970s under Jimmy Carter, so we know it's a disaster on that front. Jimmy Carter's been such a great president. So, but just get rid of the EPA. And then the Department of Education too, which guess what? Its sole job is to be oversaw by the parents. So it's a local entity. The education is a local entity. At the most, it's at the federal level. I mean, at the state level. I apologize. I'm sounding like Joe Biden here for a second.
Yeah.
But it's at the state level. Yeah. At the federal level, like I said, it was created in the 1970s. And since then, what have we gotten away from? We've gotten away from civics. We've gotten away, and they took civics, history, and geography and put it in one thing called social studies, which is a disaster. Trust me, you need geography in the intelligence field and the military field. You need it bad. That way you know all 140 plus countries out there. And you need civics. You need to understand the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, Articles of Confederation, and all that stuff. So that way you know the background behind this. That way you actually have an understanding of why Congress is so powerful and the executive order is just a check on that. And the Supreme Court's so weak the way it's supposed to be. So that way we don't turn into an authoritarian state, because those who don't know history are going to wind up returning us back to it. So.
That's right. Very good. Okay. Broad question.
Yes, sir.
And you can cut loose on this. What is wrong with the U.S. general government? Overall, what is wrong with it? Is it broken?
Yes, it's broken. The federal government is broken. It's a disaster. It's not following the Constitution. They're not holding up to their oaths of office whatsoever. We need term limits bad. For a reason. We need to restore civics back to our local governments, to our local education system. And the federal government is just so powerful and so out of control. It literally brings in $4 trillion in taxes every year. That's a lot of money. There's $2 billion a month that goes out on the interest on the debt to China. China owns $1.1 trillion of our debt. It's not getting paid off. It's $25 billion a year in interest. $2 billion a month going from us to DC to China. Like I said, $2 billion a month. They need to balance the budget. They need term limits. They need to get fresh faces in there. And they really need to restore the power back to the people in the states. There's so much wrong with it. It's not even funny. That's why I'm only running for 3 terms, 6 years taller, because the amount of stupidity and the disaster that's up there, it's going to be like, this is a project.
Yeah. Okay. Is our U.S. general government salvageable? Yeah. Or is it time for the states to dissolve it and rebuild it through convention of states? Or do we secede? What do you believe?
Well, Texas is designed to be secession. It's secession proof. They can secede whenever they want to. But the U.S. government is salvageable, and I think it could be easily salvageable through we the people and convention of states, which Article 5, there's 2 parts of Article 5. There's the states and the federal government get involved, or just the states alone. So I think at this point it would require the states to do it. But if we can get, say, maybe Ron DeSantis up there and right Congress, where Ronald Reagan didn't have to fight with Tip O'Neill, or Robert Byrd, who was an active Klansman in the 1980s, who was a Senate Majority Leader, who Joseph Robinette Biden voted for to be the Senate Majority Leader in the 1980s, but somehow we're the racist party. It's so stupid. But the simple fact is getting the right Congress, maybe if we get a strong, powerful Republican Congress with Ron DeSantis, who's a constitutionalist. Trump is a smart businessman, and he wound up being a lot more Republican and constitutionalist than I thought, but he's still a businessman. He did make some mistakes, especially with trying to give amnesty to 3 million people in January 2018 when they were saying only 750,000 people were under the age of 18. I believe under the age of 10 is where it should be, because I've seen my fellow brothers in Iraq get killed by kids in their teenage years. So it is salvageable. It can be done through the people, the Article 5, whether it's state and federal or just state alone. But the amount of push to the left that the Democrat Party is doing is actually waking us up and bringing us back to civics and homeschool education. And it's really, to me, we're on the precipice of, I think, the people legally and professionally doing it and taking their country back, which I think we can easily do in the next 10 years.
Okay. Would you have supported sending taxpayer dollars to the Ukraine to defend the assumed, now these are my words, to defend the assumed U.S. interests there, or would you have held back funds until a full and thorough investigation of U.S. conflicts of interest and illegal insider activity were uncovered?
When I was in the intelligence community, the top 2 threats were Russia, China. Russia has the most nuclear weapons per country in the world. So Russia is a problem, and Vladimir Putin wants to restore the Soviet Union, which was Ronald Reagan's biggest achievement, which was the downfall of the Soviet Union. So to bring back the Soviet Union is a stain on Vladimir Putin. The money going to Ukraine, there's a big issue here. There's a big for, because we want to keep Vladimir Putin in check, but there's a big against, because the amount of kickback money that goes to Hunter Biden, the Romney kids, the Pelosi kids, all that stuff. My theory on this is the initial $40 billion is that 90% is slush money. 10% is actual money going to Ukraine to fight the war. Now, I've also gotten this question, too, on the campaign trail. The southern border is more of a bigger issue than Ukraine is, so you need to focus on the southern border and forget Ukraine. That's their own country, blah, blah, blah. We can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. We can literally take care of Ukraine to hold off Russia, to hold off a war, because I've been to war. I've seen the ugly side of it. I lost one of my troops, first of 9 of my squadron, 120 in my brigade. I've seen the ugly side of war. So I want to push it off as long as possible. And there is a war going on with a lot of rape, people burning, pillaging, all that stuff. So to protect the innocent people of Ukraine, because Vladimir Putin crossed that border, so that is a war right there. That Vladimir Putin started. It's not Ukraine. Vladimir Putin crossed that border. Ukraine didn't cross his. So Vladimir Putin started that war. We need to support Ukraine, but we need to ensure every single taxpayer penny, not dollar, penny coming out of your pocket and your pocket over there, goes straight to Ukraine to fight them, and none of it gets kicked back to Hunter Biden and all that stuff. That's my biggest enforcement of that.
Okay. What are your feelings about the reaction to the you-know-what in 2020 and the mandates imposed on federal employees by Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi?
Yeah.
Would you have complied or stood in non-compliance no matter what the consequences?
Well, if she decided to bring down mask mandates for me, and I'm a member of Congress first, I will be like Lauren Boebert, concealed carrying. So I do concealed carry most of the time. I know it's like Fight Club, you're not supposed to talk about it. But when I thought mask mandates, I was thinking, because in the Army, one of the first things they do is they put you in a gas chamber. Full suit, everything, chlorine gas chamber. Halfway through, they have you say the soldier's creed, and they take the mask off.
Yeah.
Now you're coughing, sneezing, everything. It's burning. You get outside, it clears your sinuses out. It's the most. I could smell a tree from 50 miles away. It was the best feeling ever.
I remember that.
So when I thought mask mandates, I thought it was actual full CBRN mask. When they came out the cloth mask, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. You're gonna breathe out COVID, and then you're gonna, because your body wants to get rid of it, then you're gonna breathe it back in because it gets stuck in the mask. You're gonna breathe out all this CO2, which is supposed to be bad for the planet, but somehow it's okay to breathe back in as a human being, which causes all kinds of damage. And it's just like, no, I'm not doing this. So if you want me to give a mask, I'm not doing it. So Yeah.
Okay.
I understand federal employees, if they have to work directly for it and they're paid their salary, but elected officials like us, not happening. And I don't see that happening in the next 3 terms anyway with a Republican Congress. So
Well, let's hope not. I do believe that there is going to be another hammer that falls, or at least they're going to try to drop another hammer.
Wait, there's another October surprise coming? I never knew this. Well, this is not politics.
Yeah.
Politics is ethical.
Well, we won't go down that weed trail, but I'm just suspicious.
Yeah.
That's about it. I have no verification.
Yeah.
Okay. Your Republican primary opponent has been accused of being a Republican establishment candidate by some.
Yeah.
Without naming names, if possible, is this true or not? If it is true, why do you believe it's true?
Well, my primary opponent, just the way people know the full picture here, my general election opponent is Sharice Davids, who's the incumbent in Kansas 3rd. My primary opponent is Amanda Atkins. She is an establishment candidate. After she graduated college in 1998, she went to D.C., worked at the NRCC, the National Republican Committee, and was a fundraiser for them for 7 years, working in that department, raising money for them for 7 years. She comes back. She works for the Republican Party, 15 years with the Republican Party, winds up being the Kansas GOP chairwoman. This is the part that gets me with her being the Mitch McConnell establishment candidate of this election cycle and me being the Tea Party person. She states that in 2010, she coordinated and took care of the 2010 sweep of Kansas. I was stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas. If you asked me who Amanda Atkins was, I'd be like, who are you talking about? I have no idea. In 2010, that was the Tea Party movement. That was the We the People movement. We had enough of the final 2 years of Bush. We had enough of Barack Obama. We want our government back. We're tired of being taxed and regulated and told what to do from a federal government that has none of these powers. So the simple fact is, she acts like 2010, she orchestrated, she conducted, she did. That sounds exactly like Mitch McConnell. And I'm like going here and going, no, this is We the People. This is our movement. This is the Tea Party movement. That's why I'm the Tea Party candidate, which I was a Tea Party kid and all that stuff in 2010 and all that stuff. And the other part too is in 2014, I got so pissed off at Mitch McConnell and John Boehner and how they abused the Tea Party and trashed the Tea Party that in 2014, when I was stationed in Texas, I voted pure libertarian. I was just so tired of it all. I'm like, and this is one of the things that I realized with restoring the government and stuff like that and restoring the Republican Party. Because Ronald Reagan got so tired of the establishment Republican Party. He decided the proper way to do it is be part of the Republican Party and pull that Overton window back to not the establishment, but the founding principles of the Republican Party and this country and away from the establishment the way it's supposed to be. This is what I plan on doing, is making sure Kansas 3rd, it has a candidate who is a true constitutionalist and is not an establishment candidate. So.
Right. Okay. Now here's an odd question.
Yeah.
I was kind of, scoping your Facebook page at one point.
Yeah.
There was a term.
Physical federalism. To me, physical federalism is somebody who's financially oriented.
Yeah.
But also is oriented towards states having power and ending the federal monopoly. So a state is once full authoritarian state, which is why you would have D.C. and the D.C. government growing into an authoritarian state. Federalism is sending it back down to the states. And to me, physical federalism is not only sending it back down to the states, but also balancing the budget and sending a lot of these things back down to the states so that way it stabilizes the dollars and gives the power back to the states and the people the way it's supposed to be. So that's my philosophy on it, and that's something I've learned over the years, and that's why I may be the only person using the word physical federalism.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that before.
So, but it's me just saying, hey, take care of the currency at the federal level. Make sure it's stable. Make sure it's taken care of. Because remember, Trump got to $1.86 in gasoline prices without balancing the budget, without stabilizing the dollar, without telling the printing presses in Philadelphia to Denver to slow it down. That way the population boom can catch up with it all. So we get back more to the gold standard. So to me, setting the power back to the states, spending less money on the federal government, and actually balancing the budget and stabilizing the dollar, that to me is the end state of it all. That way we can get back to easy living, because one of the things I say on the campaign trail is we all need a vacation from these federal government disasters. So
yes. So that's
fiscal.
Fiscalist or fiscal
federalism.
Yep. Okay. Now let me ask another question to follow up for that one. Would you prefer the control of the federal government under fiscal federalism, or would you rather see the federal government just simply not take that money out of the states in the first place? It's just an open question.
The problem is the U.S. government owns the mints, which owns the power production of the dollar.
But they tax the people directly, which is in the Constitution.
Which, to me, the income tax was actually, if you follow history, was declared unconstitutional after the Civil War. So, to me, the income tax is another tax, and taxation is theft in many accounts, and all that stuff. So, the only reason why we should be taxed is take care of the military, take care of national security, and to me, get us to a part-time federal government and stuff like that. So, like I said, $4 trillion in taxes, that's a lot of money. And to me, it's just a lot of that needs to probably get back to the states. But we need to ensure that our federal government, the military, is ready for a two-front war at all costs at any time. Granted, we should never go to war. That should always be the last option on the table. But in case we do, because Russia or China or Iran decide to get out of control, we can't control them anymore, then we're going to have to unleash the hounds and get after them. So just tell General Patton to get after it. So
yeah. Now, I'm going to backtrack a little bit here. When you talk about part-time government, are you talking about having House representatives like stay at home, and if they have to vote, we've got the technology to literally vote from an office here in Kansas if there's an important vote. So you're saying keep Congress at home, at bay, so they can be held accountable for what they do, and then occasionally go to Washington, D.C.?
I didn't think about it that way, because the bureaucracy and the bureaucratic state and the lobbyists will probably be a little bit pissed off because they wouldn't be able to see they would have to fly out and spend more time and money to
it's a lot
go
harder
see the
to go to 50 states.
Yeah, but my mindset was 1 weekend a month, 1 month a year, the federal government convenes, so that way they can keep up to date and make sure proper laws are adjusted and stuff.
But come back home to their state, right?
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
And the other thing, too, is you have to worry about this on the other front, too, is people don't talk about it. I'm a former intelligence analyst. In the EMP strike. An EMP strike happens, we're in a lot of trouble here. So I would definitely call for a part-time once a month, so that way they can convene. That way, if an EMP does occur, that way they can still maybe convene somehow. That's why I'm into mechanical cars, not computer-controlled cars. As a backup. But yeah, to me, reducing it reduces expenditures, reduce lobbyists and all that other stuff. So that way we get back to us having more freedoms and the federal government not thinking they need more authority to do stuff.
Is there anything out there, is there anything about you that the voter needs to know to justify their vote for you, at least in the Republican primary right now, which will be, by the way, August 2nd, 2022. That's a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Is there something important we need to know about you that would make us want to hire you for this position?
I think we've covered most of it. If, like I said, 10 years in the Army, 2 tours Iraq, 1 tour Afghanistan, lived on the southern border for 6 months, brief generals, brief NATO. But I think probably the biggest thing that hasn't been talked about is, well, 2 things. One, yes, I do have degrees or pieces of paper. I've got my associate's degree in automotive engineering and technology, but I also have my bachelor's degree and bachelor's and master's degree in business. But my biggest thing is the last 6 years, I've been a mechanic. My cylinder 7 intake valve seat dropped into my piston, destroyed my piston, had to pull the engine out, replace cylinder 7. This is during the time of COVID in June, July 2020. So there, me and my uncle are just rebuilding my engine. $3,000 worth of parts. 1 month later, it's up and running. I'm a blue-collar guy. I've been working on cars. I can do tires blindfoldedly, kind of like Tim Allen. If you can't change a tire, you're not a real man. And yes, I can define what a man is. But, yeah, so most politicians don't even know what a piston is. They think it's the piston cup from the Cars, the movie. Oh, my God, the piston cup. I love Mater. But, no, I've been a blue-collar worker. I've turned wrenches. I come from a blue-collar family. Like I said, my father spent the last 34 years as a union boiler operator, 6 years as a nuclear engine operator. Grandfather on the McCaughrean side, retired union truck driver, all that stuff. He sadly passed away a couple months ago. And my grandfather on my mom's side he did all kinds of blue collar work, and after he got out of the Marines and stuff like that. So there's a lot of blue collar in me, and I don't have to call myself Lunch Bucket Joe. It's just always nobody else calls me Lunch Bucket Joe, even though I've never spent time in the private sector like Joe Biden. So I've done time in the private sector as a bottom lineman and stuff like that. So I'm not one of these establishment candidates.
Yeah. So if we were to compare your opponent with you, I mean, you're a man of the people.
Yeah.
Whereas your opponent may not be.
She's the establishment. She's fully up there. All this stuff. She's paid her dues, but she hasn't paid her dues with us linemen, people that keep these restaurants going, that keep these farms going, that keep these cars going, and keep the trains going and stuff like that. So
you think she could be out of touch with the people and the economy, how things operate?
Could be. Would be light, especially in these southern 3 counties of Anderson, Franklin, and Miami County. So, yes,
okay.
sir.
All right. Well, I think we've done well today, and I appreciate you coming in, John.
Yes, sir.
And you're a candidate for U.S. House representing the 3rd District of Kansas, and we wish you the best of luck and appreciate your honesty and frankness in answering these questions.
Yeah.
Appreciate it very much.
If they can, John for Kansas 3, John for Kansas, the number 3.com is the website. And like I said, August 2nd is the main voting deadline to get out there and vote. Some counties are open early. I'm not a big fan of early elections. And I kind of like to lead the surprise too. The military element of surprise is always a big one. So if you can vote, hold off till August 2nd. That way they can not tally them up when they're behind closed doors. Definitely give it the biggest Kansas surprise in electoral history on August 2nd and August 3rd. We'll get after it. And I've got a lot of money waiting until August 3rd. Once I defeat Amanda, that's going to join in, and we're going to get after it, and we're going to defeat the dark money because Sharice has raised over $3 million, and less than 32% of that has come from inside Kansas. Not just Kansas 3rd, but the whole state of Kansas. So there's a lot of Democrat dark money coming into Sharice David's race, and we need to take care of that because she definitely doesn't represent us.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that'll be it for today. Signing off, this is Verity Secret.